We're now live, Chair. Thank you.
Welcome to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council. My name is Councillor Peter Fane and I'm the Chair of the Council. My Vice Chair on my left is Councillor Peter Sanford. Just some announcements. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. We also allow recording by others, filming and photography. Please will all members ensure that their phone is on silent. You should please keep your microphone switched off until I invite you to speak. If you're participating remotely, then when you're invited to address the meeting, you can switch your microphone and camera on, but otherwise, please keep them both switched off. And of course, members attending remotely should indicate their wish to speak through the chat message, and I would ask people not to use the chat for any other function. As usual, those present in the chamber, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and my Vice Chair will note the order of speakers. When we move to a vote on any item, if there is not clear affirmation, we will take a yes.
Oh, Lawrence, it's the wrong button.
I thought for a moment I was being censored by my own microphone. When we move to a vote on any item and there is not clear affirmation, I will state that a recorded vote will be taken. Members in the chamber will then vote electronically, selecting for, against or abstain, and the result will be displayed on the screens. I believe this meeting is quorate, so we will proceed. Just before we proceed, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome to the meeting, to our first meeting of full council, Pippa Tovey, who is the new team leader on democratic services, and I'm sure members would take the opportunity to introduce themselves subsequently outside this meeting. I know that will be welcome. Item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Earl, Garvey, Rippeth, Halings, Warren Green, Van der Ven, Jackson Wood, Van der Wire, and I think Councillor Redrup is online, and Councillor Bhattacharya as well.
Thank you for that. Are there any members who are participating remotely? No? I think these are Councillor Redrup, maybe, yes, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are required to declare the existence and nature of any interest which affects or relates to any item of business. Yeah, Councillor Lentel.
Just to check that all officers here present are in compliance with the rules on declaration of possible or definite conflicts of interest. I've brought along a copy of our constitution just to be absolutely clear.
Do you have a declaration of interest?
Just a question.
I think members are aware of the rules on this, and certainly I will draw their attention to it as necessary. Thank you, Councillor Lentel. Right. Do any members have any interest which they wish to declare?
Thank you, Chair. Just that I'm a member of the Grace Cambridge Partnership and it is labelled on the agenda.
Thank you for that. Any other interests which need to be declared? Right. I would remind members that they need to keep their register of interests up to date and to inform Democratic Services of any changes, and that if any potential conflicts of interest become apparent later in the meeting, then you should declare them then. Item 4, minutes of our last meeting of this council held on 13th of July. Do members have any amendments to these minutes? I'll ask our Democratic Services first, whether there are any amendments.
No amendments have been reported to us, Chair.
Okay, in that case, I think my Vice Chair to report, suggest an amendment.
Happy to second, subject to the removal of the duplicate section 1. Apologies in the published minutes.
So I have That's just a technical submission. One of the items, as members will no doubt have noticed, is repeated twice in the minutes, but I don't think we need to debate that. So we have a seconder for my motion that we now approve these minutes. Members, are you content to take this matter by affirmation? Does anyone wish to vote against that or to abstain? Thank you. Council therefore agrees the approval of the minutes of the last meeting as amended as a correct record. We now move to item 5A. Item 5 is announcements, and I will start with my own announcements very briefly. As members may be aware, this council was formed by merger of South Cambs District Council, it was then, with Chesterton Rural District Council on 1st of April 1974. Therefore, next year will be our 50th anniversary. And I think it appropriate that we do have an event to mark that. I'm proposing that Civic Affairs Committee, that I should work with Civic Affairs Committee to draw up the nature of those proposals and bring them back to you. If anyone has concerns about that, they can either raise them with me or another member of Civic Affairs Committee, or raise it now if you wish to. So I'm going to take it that we're agreed on that. I have one other announcement I would like to make. Members may recall that at a previous meeting, it was my privilege to award a badge to my predecessor as council chair, and it subsequently became apparent that the person who was chair of council in 2015 to 2017, I think, never received her badge. And so if members will bear with me for a moment, I just want to put that right and present a well-deserved badge to Councillor Sue Ellington. Oh, she's coming to me rather than me coming to her. So. And I would stress, all right. But I would stress this is not just remembering that she was chair in those years, but also long and distinguished service that we all recognise. Right, we then move on to announcements from the leader. Leader, do you have any announcements?
Thank you very much. Just a couple. Very pleased to have learned in the last few days that we have won a bronze award for our carbon literacy. I've got that right, jolly good. So that's excellent. Well done to all the team. And last Thursday, I was able, with Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Mills, to attend the SME Business Awards, which was run by the Cambridge Independent. I think there was 22 South Cambs businesses there. 7 of them won. We sponsored the Innovation Award, and that was won by Welsh's Transport from Duxford. So it was, and I think actually they won all sorts of things. Actually, they were quite a team. So it was a pleasure to do that, and we will continue to support local businesses in whatever way we can.
Thank you, Leader. Are there any announcements from Head of Paid Service, item 5C? No, thank you. None. So we then move on to questions from the public. I set out the ground rules for this last time. Do we have any questions from members of the public? We did have a question submitted and approved by Mr. Daniel Fulton. Mr. Fulton, I think, is not here, so we will submit a written reply to that question. Petitions, item 7. Do we have any petitions? I believe no petitions have been received. That's correct. We then move to item 8. And item 8A is the report from the Civic Affairs Committee, which I will present as chair of that committee. And the main item I want to introduce is to propose the adoption of the recommendations of the Civic Affairs Committee, which are on page 27 of your agenda pack. The recommendation to Council is that Council changes the Constitution to allow the appointment of an independent member of the Audit and Corporate Governance Committee, noting that they should not have voting rights, that they should be on the electoral roll and within the Cambridgeshire area, and that the recruitment process be delegated to the Audit and Corporate Governance Committee. It will, of course, as set out in your papers on page 33, be officer-led, and that the Audit and Corporate Governance Committee be authorised to make the necessary arrangements to recruit and select the independent member. Suggested constitutional additions come in Appendix C. Before I call for a seconder, I just want to explain that this was a decision endorsed by the Civic Affairs Committee. It is a move towards the recommendations of CIPFA. As I think many of us will appreciate, those recommendations are there should be 2 independent members and they should have voting rights. That is not the recommendation that I'm putting forward today. It would be 1 independent member with no voting rights and the other conditions as set out. So I now propose that. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I second and reserve my right to speak.
If I may, I'll take Michael Atkins as Chair of the Ordinary Government, but thank you for coming forward there. Right. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? I think we have Councillor Stephen Drew. Yes. Councillor Drew.
I'll try and do better than I did at Cabinet earlier last week when I forgot how to speak. I'm completely supportive of the recommendation that's here, but I would like to propose an amendment at point A2. I would like to propose removing the words "be on the electoral roll" and replace with "be resident."
Do you have a seconder for your amendment?
I do.
I think I see Councillor Richard Stobart. Do you wish to speak on that?
I won't, but
Right.
I'm seconding the motion.
You have, of course, will still have the right to speak at the end if there is a debate on that. Does anyone wish to speak on this proposed amendment? Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, my microphone's doing something odd. I was actually going to ask a question about this anyway, but it's more pertinent with Councillor Drew's proposed amendment. I'm sure it has been looked at by Civic Affairs, but I was wondering if we could have an explanation as to why it says Cambridgeshire, because that could cut both ways. It's Cambridgeshire, not South Cambridgeshire, but equally, if we limit ourselves to Cambridgeshire, are we, limiting the pool too narrowly?
I think that's a question to me as Chair of Civic Affairs. Can I come back to that in a minute? I see we also have, I gather Councillor Heather Williams would like to speak on this.
I think I can sort of respond to that. First of all, to the proposed amendment, I think actually it's a shame that amendment's been proposed. We at Civic Affairs actually went through a process of, we actually conjourned to make sure that we could work cross-party to ensure something that would work for everybody. To make changes now, I think, means that was pretty pointless and quite clear the administration does not want political consensus on things. Otherwise, what was the point of doing what we did then? The reason to answer in Councillor Richards was originally we started off with South Cambridgeshire because we wanted to make sure the person had a stake in it, that they were local and that they would really understand the dynamics of South Cambridgeshire. Obviously, some people didn't feel that that was broad enough and the whole idea of Cambridgeshire was to open it out about a bit more. I think it's a real shame. I respect the political arithmetic of this council, and the leader's sort of half smiling there, so she knows she's got the votes to get it through. But I think it's a real shame because actually having a voter and giving a voter of this area someone that had a tangible link, because of course you can have, and we debated this about the electoral roll, you can have 2 homes, you can have different places. So I think you've made it weaker. And you might think it's very clever what you've done, but I think you'll regret it later on.
I'm next going to call Councillor Mark Howell. Just before I do that, I want to stress that we are debating the amendment put forward by Councillor Drew at this point. So the question asked me by Dr. Richard Williams as to the Cambridge area I'll come back to at the end of this debate, if I may. Councillor Mock-Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the reason I think it'd be fair to say that I'm the one who pushed for this, and we compromised on Cambridgeshire because I actually only wanted South Cambridgeshire. So I think that's what happened there. But the reason we said electorate is that the persons, so to speak, has got skin in the game. They are local, they know the issues. Resident was never really clearly defined. What is a resident? How do you define somebody as a resident? Is somebody who's staying here for a week or two a resident? I mean, so it was very clearly put as electorate so that we could actually see who the people are and are they in the actual Cambridgeshire area, not visiting here and then actually coming from another part of the country. So that is why we very clearly went for electorate. It was no more than that, to actually show the people that, you know, the decisions you're going to make in here or be part of the decisions that you're going to make in here will affect you or will be affecting people who are close to you by being in Cambridgeshire. So I'm asking if this amendment could be withdrawn because it was very clearly debated for that reason. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor, if I may, Councillor Williams, I'll take Councillor Drew first. Yes.
Sorry, I will respond to that suggestion. I suppose the thing is, in Councillor Heather Williams' point related to seeking to have cross-party support and engagement and working together is, of course, an entirely valid one, and it's something we should at all times seek to do as far as is humanly possible. And there are many, many things that we do as a council that are not politically contentious or anything whatsoever. The reason why I am proposing that electoral roll be replaced with resident is that I think that the use of the phrase electoral roll, the use of the idea of electoral roll, is exclusionary. There is no requirement on anyone who is a citizen of the UK to be on the electoral roll. They are not reduced as citizens by choosing not to be on the electoral roll. And there are many people who entirely rightly, entirely legally and philosophically correctly choose not to engage with the democratic process that the country has put in place. They are no lesser as citizens. Therefore, I do not think that when we are seeking to set up somebody as an independent member of the audit and corporate governance body, that we should exclude somebody who happens to have decided that they do not wish to be on the electoral roll. So, therefore, I think the reason why that is an entirely valid amendment to put in place is because it is much more inclusion and it much more respects the fact that people have a right to decide. So I'm afraid I'm not willing to withdraw that amendment at this stage.
Okay, so I went back to Councillor Drew. See, he wanted to take out Councillor Howe's invitation. He doesn't. I then come to Councillor John Williams.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to what Councillor Drew has said, of course, being on the electoral roll for the purpose of local elections doesn't actually mean that you have your permanent address in South Cambs. You can have a second home in South Cambs, in fact a third home in South Cambs, and be on the electoral roll for the purposes of local elections. So pretty meaningless stipulating that you have to be on the electoral roll to prove that you live in South Cambs.
I'd like to come back to Councillor Staunton. You reserved your right to speak at the end of the debate. So if you would hold on, I have Councillor Dan Lentell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Interesting. I think that the issue of not choosing to be on the electoral roll has been very well dealt with by Councillor Drew. I just wonder whether being on the council tax register or some, I mean, the idea, presumably, is to have somebody who can demonstrate, as the phrase is, skin in the game. Is there no compromise available, you know, on the tax register or something similar, you know, a phone bill, you know, with the local address? I don't know. It seems to me it would be much better if constitutional things were handled, you know, not on party and other lines. Thank you.
Thank you for that. However, I do have to say that the question is as per the amendment, whether the words on the electoral roll be replaced with the words resident. And I don't see others wanting to contribute. Councillor Richard Williams, did you want to come back again?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for indulging me. I do think there is an important point here. If the amendment is to say resident, I think it's incumbent on the administration or whoever is proposing this to give us some definition of what a resident is. The electoral roll, you can prove it, yes or no. If you say something like vague like resident, we could, in theory, get involved in a very lengthy legal debate as to whether somebody is or is not a resident, because it's not defined. So I think it's incumbent on those proposing this to tell us exactly what a resident is.
I think rather than have that discussion now, I'm going to come to Councillor Richard Stobart, who is going to second the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. So when this matter was discussed in Audit Committee, yes, these concerns were expressed. I'm not party to what happened in Civic Affairs, but the intent was that we found somebody with expertise and knowledge, and certainly knowledge of local matters. So we consider that to be very important. Now, something about this process is the recruitment process will be officer-led. It will have a person spec and a job spec, and it would, I think, behove the Audit Committee to seek to scrutinise those documents with a view to finding the right person. So I think trying to specify too closely who that person should be and their attributes, let's depend upon the processes that are already in place. So I think this change, this loosening up, if you will, of this requirement, in the end will be narrowed down and made more acute by the process I've just described, by a proper recruitment process with scrutiny by the Audit Committee. So I would say that what we've proposed is quite sufficient. It loosens a little bit, but it leaves the final decision to an acute and well-managed recruitment process.
Right. Members, I think the time has come for us to move to a vote on this question. Do we, as proposed, replace the words "on the electoral roll" on pages, I can't remember what page it is, with the word "resident"? I propose to take this as an electronic vote. Can we move to... Thank you.
We won't write it out, sorry, Chair. Hold on.
So give us a moment and we will have an electronic vote on this question. You now have the voting options in front of you. Please remember that if you're voting in favour, you're voting in favour of the amendment as put by Councillor Drew. If you're against that amendment, you vote, you press red. Remembering, of course, to press the little button on the left first. Have all members who wish to vote now done so? Give us another moment. Have all members who wish to vote now voted? I think so. There may be one who wishes to abstain. Perhaps press the yellow button if so. I will wait until Democratic Services declare the vote outcome. So the vote is as displayed. 21 in favour of the amendment as moved by Councillor Drew, 8 against, 3 abstain. So we now move to the main proposal as amended. Do we have a Councillor Heather Williams?
It's still on here, Chair, just so you know. So I will propose an amendment to the amended substantive item. We're playing those games, in that there will be a definition of what a resident is included in the Constitution, if that's what we're doing.
So are you proposing a definition yourself?
Yes, a legal...
So what definition are you proposing?
I'm saying you're going to have to... It wasn't I'll propose the residents. The amendment is that a legal definition that can be delegated to officers or Liberal Democrats, a leader of... a definition legally of a resident to be included so everybody knows very clearly constitutionally who can apply and who cannot.
Thank you. That's a further proposal for an amendment. Since no specific wording has been put forward, that means that this would be left to officers to draw up a legal definition of the word resident. But the effect of the amendment is that officers should be asked to do so, to define the effect of the vote that we have just taken. I think the leader wanted to speak on that point. Okay, do we have a second? We have a seconder. Thank you, the leader.
Could I ask a question of John Murphy, please? Is there such a thing as a legal definition of a resident?
I haven't been given notice of this prior, but I thought there may be an agreed definition. I'm not sure if what's being sought is an agreed definition.
Members, I do not propose to go into a debate now as to what the definition of a resident might be. As the legal officer has just said, he's had no notice of that. Legal officers will address this subsequently. The nature of the motion as amended has now been agreed, and I suggest we take by affirmation that we now ask legal officers to define exactly what we mean by that. Is everyone prepared to accept that?
Yeah, Chair,
Do you want to speak as seconder?
I would like to say a few words as seconder, because I can sort of answer the question that was just, but there are several legal definitions of resident, which is the problem. There's resident for tax purposes, there's habitual residence for immigration, and related things. So there are lots and lots and lots of different legal definitions of resident, which is the problem with this definition of, say, something vague like a resident. The Oxford English Dictionary tells us a resident is a long-term person whose long-term abode is in an area. What's long-term? 6 months, 5 months, 10 months, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years? Who knows? So that is why it is vital, if we're not to potentially find ourselves in a legal wrangle in the future, that we have some definition of what a resident is for the purposes of our constitution.
Thank you for that. This is a proposal from the Civic Affairs Committee. We're clearly not going to be able to define today what a resident is. So my suggestion is that we leave it to the legal officers to come to a definition, and that we as a council accept the recommendations of the Civic Affairs Committee on that, because I do not want to debate on the definition of the word resident in this meeting. Is that acceptable?
Sorry, Chair, as amended.
Yes, the motion is as amended. Do you want me to repeat my statement? No. Can we take that by affirmation, or do we have a point of order on that? Yes, the motion which has been seconded will be put, I'm suggesting that we take that by affirmation. The effect of that would be that officers come up with a definition of this, because we simply cannot do that today. Is that acceptable to the mover of the motion?
That's fine, and then we'll vote on the substantive item.
Yes, we're voting at the moment on whether we define the word resident. Bear with me a second. Right, the motion before us is that the word resident, as in the motion as amended, needs to be defined. I am suggesting that that is something that, having been proposed and seconded, we can now take by affirmation, and we then leave it to officers to define it. The question then is the officer's definition of that word acceptable? And if the movers of the motion would agree, I am suggesting that the Civic Affairs Committee, who put this motion before us, be invited to approve the definition as put forward by officers. Is that acceptable to the movers and seconders of the motion? That being acceptable to move, can we take that by affirmation? Is any member opposed to that? Anyone wish to abstain? That is agreed. So the wording of the motion now is as on your papers, except that item 2 is amended to say, be resident within the Cambridgeshire area that word resident to be defined by officers and approved by the Civic Affairs Committee. That is the motion now before us. We can now move to a debate on that motion as amended. Does anyone wish to... I think I have a seconder for that, don't I? Did I have a seconder for that? I honestly can't remember. I did. I had Michael Atkins. Did you wish to speak now or reserve your speech to the end? You're reserved to the end. Anyone want to speak on the motion as amended? Councillor Heather Williams.
As I said earlier, it's a shame we've had to have all this to and fro. I strongly believed at Civic Affairs that it was the right compromise and conclusions that we came to. I haven't changed in my view at all, so I will be consistent and I will vote against.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to contribute to the debate on this? I have no other speakers. Councillor Michael Atkins, did you want to speak as seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for your discussion today. It's becoming increasingly expected that there is independent membership on the public audit committees. I'm pleased that we've found a proportionate way to incorporate this into our own structure. The recruitment of the person will be officer-led, but I'm very clear that the appointment will only be made if a well-qualified individual applies and accepts who can positively contribute to the existing efforts of the committee. I'd like to thank the current members of Audit and of Governance. It's certainly no reflection on them that we're bringing in this additional independent scrutiny. It's a very well qualified, very able body already, and I'm sure this will only add to that. And thank you also to members of Civic Affairs for their consideration of this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I now propose that we go to an electronic vote on this matter. Those in favour are voting in favour of the motion as already amended and defined. So if you would press your blue button, and then if in favour of the motion as amended, the green button. The green or red button, I should say. So if you're in favour of the motion as amended, the green button. If you're opposed to it, the red button. Has everyone now voted who wishes to vote? We have 1 abstention, 24 in favour of that motion, 8 oppose. So that motion as amended is now passed. We then move on to item 8B, which is the Young People's Task and Finish Group report to the Scrutiny Committee. This is the supplementary report, which is in your papers. And I will call on the lead member for communities to present this report and move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, back in July 2022, full council unanimously approved a motion recognising that South Cambs is a major growth area and that new homes will mean that a number of young people in the district will rise, and it's important that the voice of young people is heard in the development of council's policies and in youth engagement in local decision making at the council. In response to this, the Scrutiny and Overview Committee commissioned an all-party task and finish group involving councillors Graham Cohn, Stephen Drew, Sue Ellington, Helen Leeming and Richard Stobart, with the objective of considering options for delivering the council's aspirations. Happily, Councillor Stobart is seconding this item, and since he was heavily engaged in the work of the Task and Finish group, it's appropriate for me to leave it to him to flesh out some of the detail of this, the important points that's coming from the work. So the report summarises the work carried out by the group, and the Cabinet recommendation is that this report and the 7 recommendations shown on pages 3 and 4 of the agenda pack are accepted.
Councillor Richard Stobart, it's been indicated you might want to second this motion. Do you wish to speak now or at the end?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to second the motion. If there is questions or comments, maybe we should take those first, but I will essentially present the progress of the work and some comments on the recommendations.
Please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Handley mentioned this important motion adopted by Council last year, and the Task and Finish group, which was set up in the way that Councillor Handley mentioned, interpreted the goals set out in the motion to investigate and make recommendations on how we ensure the voice of youth in South Cambridgeshire is both sought and heard. Well, the first thing we had on our agenda was to define youth or young people. And the age range of 11 to 25 came out of our initial discussions. That is, if you will, from the later stages of childhood through secondary education and into higher education, further education and employment. Now, the numbers of young people that we're talking about in the 2021 census, 25,400 in the district, makes up 16% of the population. These are people, residents who make significant demands on the services of the council, and hence the requirement, I think, with this significant group of people going through this stage of life, that their voice should be heard and should be reflecting on council policy. Now, one of the things the Task and Finish group was acutely aware of was the need to focus on South Cam's business. Inevitably, the discussions went a little bit wider, but we sought to keep them on what South Cambridgeshire District Council does. We're also aware of the backdrop, important factors in play, the effect of COVID on young people, the growing awareness that smartphones have a deep influence on the life of young people, depression and mental health, which in young people has received a lot of attention as a serious question. And we still see in that 14 to 16 age group significant absence from school, which began during COVID and has refused to go away. One of the things the group found was that it was very difficult to set up meetings to talk about young people's affairs. We did push very hard, and we're grateful to the efforts of officers in setting things up. We ended up with, I think, a small but representative group of interview partners, if you will, and a very fruitful set of exchanges. Apart from external bodies, we did talk at some length to the Shared Planning Service and noted the quality and level of engagement that colleagues in the Planning Service have during youth engagement. So we took that to be something of an exemplar, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. A few of the things we noted from the interviews, young people want to represent themselves, so their voice does need to be heard. We need to listen. The lifestyle and culture is special and more complicated than we thought, and that prompted the idea of, as members and generally older people, we need some training, some insight into what it's like to be a teenager, a student, a young adult. There's the COVID generation. So just to give one little anecdote, at Waterbeach Action on Youth, the youth workers said you could distinguish those who'd been suddenly projected into secondary education after having been through the lockdown period. And that is a discontinuity in that group and needs to be thought about. There's worry about jobs and housing. There's detachment and disillusionment with the democratic processes. And there's a very keen sense of place and a wish to help define it. There's concern about safety and the integrity of communities. That kind of mature comment on effect on communities was kind of unexpected. So these were the raw results, and we had to work quite hard to turn the abstract into the specific. We did. Thanks officers, thanks colleagues on the Task and Finish group. This was somewhat hard work, but worth it. We did receive broad feedback, and I think some of the things that we hear and some of the things we'll continue to hear should go to other places, should go to county, should go to the combined authority. But we should be careful to make sure that those views expressed go to the right places. Concerned about the democratic process, led to this second recommendation about talking to village colleges, about talking about the democratic process. We felt the exemplary work of the Shared Planning Service should form a pattern for other parts of the Council's functions, including possibly housing or business. So we've not reached a conclusion on that, and that will be continuing work. We feel that reaching out to an educational institution to host a meeting of SEAC, Environmental Advisory Committee, would help foster openness and a sense of working together with young people. So let's bring a committee to the place where they are as an expression of how we want to involve. And then have a number of young people, perhaps through their colleges, perhaps through their, the groups that they associated with, bring some evidence for the committee to listen to. We had commented about bus services and public transport, of course we did, and I think communicating that to the combined authority will be an effective way of those young people's voices being brought to bear on policy. Our young people form a very diverse group. I've mentioned COVID, but the structure of that generation is quite involved, and I think we can see a very effective contribution to our own diversity policy. And finally, members have a big role to play, and already do. So the fact that we've said, well, we'd like members to do a bit more, isn't meant to imply that members aren't doing a lot already, but we hope to give some structure and support to members who wish to interact more. And interacting with elected bodies, school councils, college JCRs and so on, I think will be very rewarding. So the report makes it clear that there's more to be done. The value of the report is in clarifying what that is. And accepting these recommendations will perhaps gently nudge our culture and make us better able to meet the needs of this very important group of residents. May I finish just by saying thanks to officers. I won't mention names particularly, but the officer support was absolutely vital to reaching this result. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stobart, for seconding that motion. And I call on others to contribute to the debate. No specific time limit, but 3 minutes would be a good limit. I think I saw Councillor Cohn, who is also, of course, chair of the Scrutiny Committee, which this was a report. So, Councillor Cohn.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just be very brief. I just wanted to thank Councillor Stobart for chairing the Task and Finish group. I endorse the recommendations that have been made. It did go through pre-scrutiny, and a lot of the things that were discussed at length in that meeting have now been adopted as part of that report through Cabinet. So I was very pleased to see that as well. So thank you to the Cabinet for recognising that. So yeah, thank you for all your hard work on that issue.
And thank you for that. Then I think we have Councillor Lentel first, and then I'll come back to Councillor Heather Williams after that. Councillor Dan Lentel.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo the congratulations to all those involved in this. Page 3 asks officers to write to village colleges in South Cambridgeshire. Obviously, in Over and Willingham, we have a feeder secondary school, and in North Stowe, which is not a village college, we also have the Martin Bacon Academy on our doorstep. And I just wonder whether this recommendation couldn't be more inclusive. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to come back to Councillor Staunton at the end of this debate, if I may, with the indulgence of Councillor Stobart. And then I'll ask Councillor Staunton another time. It being clear that there are some questions which will need to be addressed, it seems appropriate for us to refer back to the chair of the committee at the end. I now come to Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for not merging my names. So, first of all, I'm very pleased that this has got to this point. Obviously, it was a motion that I put to Council some time ago. What I would do is reflect back to September 2019 when I first brought this motion. At that time, I think it's fair to say I was unpopular with the administration for something I've said in the press, and I feel that might be echoed again today. And the leader said to me, not today, when they, on party lines, voted it down. So I took her advice and I brought it back, because when I brought it back, it was a different day, different set of councillors. And this time it went through. So it just shows that sometimes you can make a mistake in the past and still rectify it in the future. I hope they learn that lesson more often, Chair. But I am pleased to see this. I think it is.
Carry on, please, Councillor.
Do you like me to let...
No, carry on, please, Councillor Williams.
Yeah. We've got a long way from the debate, not hate campaign, but the reality still doesn't quite work, does it, about respecting each other? And I think it is important because what we do, many of the things we do, are actually going to be future generations that receive the most impact. So it is important that their voice gets heard. And I would like to see more of them sat with us in the chamber in the years to come. And hopefully we will see the benefit of making sure that everybody has a fair say. That's not, and I should emphasise, it was never the intention to discourage others getting involved, but we know that young people are a harder to reach category, and I very much look forward to seeing the fruits that this will produce.
Just before I call the next speaker, let me be clear that although we are having a debate on this, and there may be slightly different views, I have not seen anything to suggest there is disrespect across this chamber for others' views on this issue. Now I'd like to call Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wasn't going to let this go without actually just acknowledging the fact that the youth work that the Greater Cambridgeshire Planning Service has been engaged in for a few years now has been held up as an exemplar in the way in which young people are being engaged in the district. I mean, I say this a lot of the time. Whatever it is we're building now, it's not necessarily for us, it's for our young people. And as such, it is important that we do hear their voice. In fact, we were still hearing their voice as of yesterday when there was a careers fair at the Great Barn in Bourne, and we had a stand there asking the year 5s and 6, what they know about planning, if they were going to be encouraged, trying to get them to think about planning when they're, choosing what they'll be doing in the future. So we're trying to catch them young. We also have now, as I think you will realize, the Statement of Community Involvement, which is out for consultation, which has included engagement with young people. So we have, we do want to do this, and we're glad to share the expertise that is currently within the Shared Planning Service. And just to let you know, the person who's leading it did win an award last year, the Individual of the Year Award at the Thornton Education Trust Inspiring Future Generations Awards. So there's a lot that we can share. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this report? Do we need to go back to Councillor Richard Stobart for any clarification on questions that have been raised?
Regarding the question that Councillor Lentell raised about writing to village colleges, I think it would be reasonable to broaden that out to all those in secondary education. That wouldn't be such a huge additional task, and in fact I think that was the intent originally.
Thank you. Members, I think we've had a good, if short, debate on this. I didn't detect anyone in any way against the motion here, and as Councillor Cohn pointed out, many of the recommendations have already been taken up by Cabinet on the recommendation of the pre-scrutiny committee. So I don't propose to take an electronic vote on this. I'm asking, can we take this by affirmation? All those in favour? Any against? Any wishing to abstain? That report, therefore, is noted, and the Council has agreed to the motion by affirmation. Council, I'm proposing to take a break at 3 o'clock, but let's move now to item 9, the report of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, which is on pages 39 to 54 of your packs. The council's representatives on this are on the Combined Authority Board, Councillor Bridget Smith, with Councillor John Williams as substitute. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillors Judith Rippeth and Aidan van der Weyer, not here today. And the Audit and Governance Committee, Councillor Jeff Harvey is our representative on it. Are there any questions for our representatives on the Combined Authority? Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. So we have the meetings for July and August, but obviously there was a meeting in September, I believe, of the board, was there not?
Perhaps the leader or Councillor John Williams can help us with that.
Yeah, there's always a delay in them publishing the decision notices. So the decision notices that were available are the ones that have appeared in the packs. So the decision notices for the September meeting will appear for our next council meeting.
Did you have any questions in relation to that board meeting?
I have for September, if Chair will allow. So there was the vote taken in relation to the member from this council that was representing this council, said that all options should be on the table, included road charging. I was wondering if we could have clarification as to what was meant by that, given what we later then had at the GCP.
Leader, I think you're going to refer that to Councillor John Williams, who I think was at that meeting. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you. It was in relation to the local transport and connectivity plan, which applies across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, not just Cambridge. So the reference was made in that document to road pricing, and I said that in respect of the whole of the combined authority area, we should not rule anything out or in for the future in respect of the whole of the combined authority area.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions on that? Yes, Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Okay, Chair, my question was on a different point, if that's okay. Although related to the September meeting, obviously in the September transport meeting, bus services have been discussed at the combined authority. Given that we don't meet all that often, I think it would be useful for this council if we could get an update from our representative on the combined authority about the review of some bus services that's going on at the moment, and what the council plans to do to argue our case.
Councillor John Williams.
Yeah, the bus network wasn't raised at the board meeting. We were dealing with the local transport and connectivity plan, which is a strategic document, not individual bus services. That will be subject to further consultation by the CPCA officers as we go forward over the autumn, and they will then be recommending a course of action to, first of all, the committee, to the Transport Committee, and then the Transport Committee will advise the board in January. Yeah.
Councillor.
Sorry, Chair, could I just come back on that? Apologies if I wasn't clear. It wasn't the board I was referring to there. Sorry, it was the Transport Committee meeting, which I understand Councillor MacDonald attended, because I saw him online attending it. I think it would be useful if this council could get an update on that bus review, given that, as I say, we don't meet for 2 months, and it would be useful for members to know now.
Councillor Peter MacDonald.
Yes, thanks, Chair. As Councillor Williams will know, I do represent South Cambs on that committee, and also double-hatted as a county councillor, so discussing with county council colleagues. There haven't been any meetings yet with the officers working on the various routes that are being reviewed, but we're hoping that that is going to happen very soon. And I'll update him and the rest of the council when that occurs. Thanks.
I see no further questions, so we'll move on to item 10, Greater Cambridge Partnership. Now, we have no reports published in the pack. There has been a draft report, not draft minutes, which has been circulated to members. Do our representatives on the GCP board have any comments they wish to make?
Thank you, Chair. So the members will know that we had a GCP board meeting at which there was a lack of political consensus to which the board could agree to move forward. So that was left with a decision not to proceed.
Are there any questions for our representative on the GCP? Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I attended that meeting and it's no secret that I wasn't supportive of the plans, but I would respect the honesty that Councillor Milnes shared and his dissatisfaction with the decision that was made. I appreciate that was not an easy meeting for him to attend and be at, despite myself believing sort of a contrary view, but it was noticeable that it was difficult and I respect that. The one thing I would like to ask though is from the Assembly, we were not actually allowed to scrutinise the papers before they came to board, and a statement in support of that was read out on behalf of Councillor Bridget Smith, our leader. So given something that scrutiny has been something that was been very passionate about in the past, could I ask, is the leadership happy with the fact that the GCP Assembly was not allowed to scrutinise the papers?
Does the leader want to comment on that?
Not really, because I'm not sure it's quite the case, really, because I think the recommendations are gone. Yeah,
I think the question was whether the leader is happy. The leader doesn't wish to respond to that. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a serious question because it's a question that's vitally important to everyone who lives in South Cambridgeshire. The question is, who is making decisions now on the GCP? Because we had a situation in the board meeting last week where our representative basically said that the Making Connections plan had been blown up by Councillor Halings, the leader of the internal opposition who's not here today, Councillor Nethsinger. Councillor Smith was not consulted on the letter that they published, saying that they were in favour of light rail and ruling out the congestion charge. So I think that leaves all of us who live in Cambridgeshire or South Cambridgeshire with a question mark really as to who's calling the shots these days. Is it the leadership of South Cambridgeshire District Council, or is it the parliamentary candidate for South Cambridgeshire for the Liberal Democrats?
Councillor Milnes.
So you'll know from the early days of the establishment of the city deal with which the GCP is the appointed body as a joint committee of the three councils, and that decisions have to be taken by consensus among the voting members, which are the three county members, and without that consensus we can't take decisions unless we take them away and then bring back and vote in a majority. But it was clear, as I've just said earlier, that there was no political consensus across those three councils in which way to go.
I see no further questions to our GCP board representative. So I think then we'll move on to item 11, which is an update on the Oxford to Cambridge Pan-Regional Partnership, a report which is on pages 55 to 58 of your papers. And I invite the Leader of Council to present this update report.
Thank you. The report's as in the papers.
So are there any questions on this item? Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. I feel like I was going to channel Councillor Nick Wright when he was here, when he used to ask the leader what vision was she representing when she went to the Oxcam Arc. But I think I'm going to tail on what Councillor Richard Williams said. When represented here, is it the council or do the parliamentary candidates have control of that as well?
Leader, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a nonsense to suggest parliamentary candidates have any influence at all over the Oxford-Cambridge partnership. or anything else, quite honestly. You know, parliamentarians and parliamentary candidates have a free voice to say whatever they want. And you know, we have an MP in South Cambridgeshire who, almost on a daily basis, says stuff that conflicts with his own political party, which happens to be the government. So, you know, they are free to do and say whatever they wish. On the Oxford-Cambridge partnership, it is a partnership, it's a bottom-up partnership. I have, you know, it's now, the board has now met. I'm privileged to still be leading on the environment on that. I think that's acknowledgement that actually I've done a jolly good job over the last 5.5 years to make sure that the potential for environmental enhancements is absolutely key to what the Oxford-Cambridge partnership can achieve. So, you know, this is collaborative work involving a large number of other councils of all political persuasions. And, you know, I think if you've read the papers and you've seen the list of environmental projects there, I think it would probably be quite difficult for even the Conservative group to disagree with the virtue of any of them.
I think we then have a question from Councillor Mark Howell. I think we then have a question from Councillor Dan Lentel. It's dangerous, I should mention, to move your hands in sight of the chairman. But my apologies, Councillor Mark Howell.
This is why it's a good idea not to go to an auction house with Councillor Howell. You'll come away with a hat stand that you didn't plan on bidding on. Chair, what we're seeing with the Oxcam, I'm trying to think of another word for scam, what we're seeing with Oxcam is the same problem that we've got with the 4-day week and the same problem that we've got with transport policy, which is it's not entirely clear why there hasn't been a full debate here, a proper vote here, and proper overview and scrutiny of who is making the decisions and how the decisions are being made here. And the leader's kind of given the game away when she says, oh, what we're doing, the ends, justify the means. And I have to say, I don't think there's anything very liberal or democratic in that philosophy. Thank you.
Peter, did you wish to respond?
I didn't hear a question, so no.
Well, I don't... Oh, yes, I see one more question. Beg your pardon. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the leader a question about the data observatory that was set up. I mean, it's quite an expensive project. It's a £175,000 budget, according to the papers, with a £50,000 setup fee, or setup costs, which is an awful lot of money to produce data on an area where there's quite a lot of data already. So I would be interested if the leader could tell us what she thinks the value added is from yet another data observatory for the Oxford-Cambridge region.
Peter?
So I mean, you're quite right. There is a lot of data around, but unfortunately that data doesn't all sit in one place. It sits all over the place. So, you know, part of the government's vision for OCP is that it facilitates inward investment. So it facilitates the maximisation of the economic opportunities of those businesses that are currently within the region, but also facilitates significant inward investment from elsewhere. And if we're talking about people making substantial investment in the region, you know, they need access to the data from a single source in order for them to decide, you know, where is the best place for them to put their investment, what are the opportunities, what is the workforce availability, what are the supply chains that they can tap into. So I think it's about bringing all that data together. The money that's being spent on that has come directly from the Department of Health, Department of Levelling Up and local communities. They've invested £2.5 million as an initial starter there. All of this is under the auspices of very senior civil servants. The board meetings always have senior civil servants from DULUC in them, and all spend, as far as I know, has to have the sign-off of government as well. I'm looking to Liz just to confirm that I'm right about that. Okay, so money is not spent without civil servant approval, and and I think Bays are involved in this, and all sorts of other government bodies, and they absolutely see what the added value is as far as making sure that this country, even in these straitened times, maintains its place economically on the world stage.
Thank you. I have further questions coming forward. We encourage members to confine themselves to one question if they can, but I see that both Dr. Richard Williams and Councillor Dan Lentel would like to come back. Can I go to Councillor Drew first?
I'd just ask the leader if she would agree with me that one of the things that always seems very, very interesting about any discussion that is held in this council chamber related to the Oxford-Cambridge Regional Partnership is that the opposition to the Oxford-Cambridge Regional Partnership comes overwhelmingly from one group of councillors, and the support for the work that she undertakes as a representative to the Oxford-Cambridge Regional Partnership comes from another group of councillors. And that somebody looking from outside might expect that the group of councillors who support the actions the government is taking in establishing the Oxford-Cambridge Regional Partnership and providing funds and working to ensure that our two great centres of learning and our development of science and technology and the biotech industries and the transport links and all these things that are in place, would the leader agree with me that it's very interesting to note that the work that is being done to support the government's work in relation to this comes from the Liberal Democrat administration, and the opposition, on every single occasion that this topic comes up, with the ongoing criticism of the work of the Oxford-Cambridge Regional Partnership and the questioning of the money it spends, comes from the Conservative opposition, who are basically saying that their own government's policy in relation to this is clearly wrong.
Point of personal explanation.
I'm sorry. Well, fair enough. We'll come back to your point in a minute. Leader, did you wish to comment on that? I'm not sure I detected a question there or a statement, but you're welcome to comment.
It's a very interesting observation by Councillor Drew, and I appreciate him making that observation. The whole point about partnerships, as we know from the Combined Authority Partnership, from the GCP Partnership, is about being a good partner and being able to work within partnerships, because actually this our own council here stands to get a lot out of being a good partner, taking part in those partnerships. If councils are parochial and just hunker down within their own geographic confines, they will not flourish. So, we are recognised as a Liberal Democrat organisation here of being a very good partner who transcends the politics in order to maximise the benefit to this area from participating in those partnerships.
Before we proceed to any further questions, I think Councillor Heather Williams has a point of personal explanation do you want to raise?
Yes, in relation to the comments by Councillor Drew, because I fear he may have not quite heard me as he should have, or accurately. I didn't say any comment about whether the Oxcam Arc was a good or bad thing. I simply seeked to find out how the leader of the council is representing this council. And the frustration over the years is that's been very difficult to come to any fruition. And our job is to scrutinise how this council is represented at these bodies. No expression has been made.
Councillor Heather Williams, thank you. I think we understand you feel you have been misrepresented or misunderstood.
Is incorrect in his assertions of myself.
Now, Councillor Dr. Richard Williams, did you want to come back for a further question?
Well, I did just want to come back on that point, and I make no apologies for questioning £175,000 per year on data analysis in an area where there's already plenty of data. And I would like the leader to come back to the next council with a more detailed explanation of how quite £175,000 is justified on data. It would be much better spent. I mean, the leader mentioned earlier environmental projects. We might agree, we probably do agree on that. I'd much rather that money was spent on environmental projects than on data. Nearly £200,000. That seems an extraordinary sum.
Leader, I don't know whether you wish to comment on that or to come back as suggested with
I will. I mean, it's about the will. It's about the will of government. It's about the will of the Conservative government. It's what they want. And Mr. Gove dictated that there would be an economic work stream and an environmental work stream. And if the people leading on the economic work stream, which is not me, have been quite clear that in order to set the foundations for the work they need to do, the starting point needs to be a data observatory. Now, there is now a website, thank goodness, and all the minutes of all the meetings and all the stuff, all the information about the data observatory and everything is all on the website. So I would encourage Councillor Williams to go and have a look at the website, which will give you far more information than I can just do verbally.
Councillor Lentel, you wanted to come back again?
Yes, I just wanted to make my question clear, which is, I agree with Councillor Drew, and I agree with a lot of what's been said about the Oxcam partnership. My concern is there has never been a debate in this chamber, there has never been a vote in this chamber, and it is, as has been made rather clear, hard to scrutinise what members are doing on behalf of this council elsewhere if it isn't clear what position they're taking and how and whom is deciding it. So my question is, wouldn't it be better to have a proper debate about big policy areas before decisions are taken?
Thank you. So just to be perfectly clear, the Oxford-Cambridge Partnership is not a decision-making body. It absolutely does not set policy. Right? It's not what it's about. My role on the board is as the lead on the environment work stream. That's why I'm on the board, because I lead on the environmental work, and I lead on it very well. So the Oxford-Cambridge Partnership will not be foisting any policy or any decisions onto any member council. It's a bottom-up pan-regional partnership. It does not set policy. It does not make decisions.
Thank you, Leader. And Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. So I understand that the Oxcam, let's call it a proper thing, the Oxford to Cambridge Regional Partnership is not concerned, well, Leader, you've talked about, through your Chair, Leader, you've talked about the environmental work stream. This is to be viewed alongside the government's Green Finance Initiative, as I understand, which itself is very data intensive. I mean, if you go looking in that document, you will find such things as, tracking of credit, tracking of units, of stacking of units, and so on. So unusually for the rural environment, or perhaps not unusually for the rural environment, it is data intensive. But I just wanted to add perhaps a comment and a question. The rural world is pulling in several ways in which the metropolitan world perhaps isn't. And one of those is towards supporting, if you will, development elsewhere by managing the countryside in a much better way, in a different way to the way it's been done in the past. And rural issues that I assume are coming under the regional partnership will include new approaches to transport and energy. I wonder if the Leader might comment on the potential, if you will, coming through the partnership of developments, supporting developments, innovations in those areas.
So I think there's huge opportunities. There's going to be an all-partner conference which will be held in Milton Keynes on Friday the 24th of November, so I would encourage anybody who is interested to come to that. So it's very much in the sort of initial forming stage. The chair of the board has just retired as the chair of Highways England, so has a background in infrastructure as well as an enviable black book actually. So it's always taken a very holistic approach. Whenever I speak on the environmental things, I say this isn't just about green and blue space. This is about sustainable transport. It's about energy efficiency in houses. It's about renewable energy generation. So I think there's a lot of potential here. But it's very early days at the moment. The only thing that's really carried over from its previous iteration is the work which Liz, myself, and very much the RSPB led on in creating the environment principles, which are going to have some additional work done to them to include such things as circular economy, which they didn't cover before. So I mean that's really what it's all about. And if you read the environmental principles, I think you'll understand that.
Thank you, Leader. Now, I said a short while ago that we would have a break at 3 o'clock. Members will have noticed that we haven't, but I suggest we now take a short break. break. So if we could meet again at 3:20, 5 minutes break enough for people? And we'll then resume with membership committees and outside bodies. Thank you. Welcome back, members, to this meeting of the South Cambridgeshire District Council meeting. Firstly, a small apology that the chairman is quite incapable of telling the difference between a 5-minute break and a 10-minute break, and you all anticipated that difficulty. So here we are again. We move to item 12, membership of committees and outside bodies. Council is invited to approve the appointment of Councillor Richard Stobart as representative on the Rural Services Network and the appointment of Councillors Anna Bradnam and Paul Bearpark as representatives on the A10 Ely to A14 Improvement Scheme Working Group. Councillor Bridget Smith to move the recommendations.
Yes, I'm happy to move those recommendations. Thank you.
And me to second that.
Seconder. Does anyone wish to speak to this item? Does anyone wish to speak to this item? No. So I think no one wishes to speak on that item. Can we take that by affirmation? Any against? Any abstaining? So we've agreed that. Are there any other membership changes that should be brought to the attention of the Council? Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note the change for our representative on Civic Affairs, Councillor Lena Nieto will become a full-time member of Civic Affairs, replacing Councillor Mark Howe, and Councillor Mark Howe will become a substitute of Civic Affairs.
Thank you for that. I don't think we need any vote, but we just note that. We then come to questions from councillors, item 13, and I remind everyone that a period of 30 minutes is available for questions, which includes questions which notice has been provided as set out on the agenda, and if there is still time remaining for questions without notice. So the first question is from Councillor Daniel Lentel. Councillor Lentel, would you like to put your question, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy for it to be as on the order paper.
Thank you, that's helpful. Leader, did you wish to respond to that?
Thank you very much. So the answer is categorically no, Councillor Lentil. It was the lack of cross-party agreement on the long-term vision that sunk chances of finding a solution at this time to congestion, air quality and a diminishing public transport system.
Councillor Lentil, did you have a supplementary?
Yes, I think that the notion that the residents, however we define them, of South Cambridgeshire should have been expected to pay to access their healthcare at Addenbrooke's was almost, if not exactly, as disgraceful and immoral as any form of flat rate, regressive poll taxation. And the question I would ask, given all the immense political damage that has been done to people who are not on the blue team in this county as a result of this omni-shambles, my question is I told you so a question? No, okay, I don't have another question.
You don't have a supplementary, but I think we note your sentiments. We then move to our next question, which is from Councillor Heather Williams.
As on the order paper, Chair.
Leader.
Thank you. So most of our officers work full-time and are contracted for 37 hours a week, and that equates to 7.4 hours a day. 100 of our officers work part-time, and their contracted hours range from 5 hours a week to 35 hours a week. And we have a small number of people who are not contracted for a specific number of hours, but undertake occasional work for us for specific tasks.
Councillor Heather Williams, did you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair. Can the leader please then give a total for the workforce, the hours that are used and contracted for a day in totality, please? I can pause for her to get a calculator if she needs.
I will have to give you a written response to that.
Written response to that one, thank you. Councillor Graham Cohen.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's as on the papers.
Leader.
The average hourly wage for our officers is £18.20 per hour based upon their contracted hours.
Councillor Cohen, supplementary.
Thank you for that answer. So does that mean that the average cost to the taxpayer as a result is 134.68 per staff member that we're losing?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. Sorry, I don't understand the question.
Followed the question.
Sorry, Councillor Cohen, could you rephrase the question because I don't understand it?
Do you want to have another try, Councillor Cohen? Okay, no supplementary in this case. Thank you. Councillor Howell, I think he's no longer, he's left, so we'll get a written response there. Councillor Sue Ellington.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that any responsible manager would establish a plan B when introducing a new project. The 4-day week is a new project which affects every member of staff. So can the leader tell me what plans were put in place to revert to a 5-day week should it be necessary, i.e. a plan B?
Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. So I just need to start by saying that actually, you know, the data that has been collected and which is on our regularly updated on our website has been very supportive thus far, and I thank all our officers for all the efforts that they have put into adopting a very different style of work that has actually seen improvements in very many of our KPIs. So there's been, because this is a trial, there's been no change to workers' contractual terms and conditions. Involvement in the trial is entirely voluntary, and if one of our officers wishes to withdraw from the trial, or the trial comes to an end, then they automatically revert back to their pre-trial weekly hours.
Did you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you. It does appear to me that staff members will have had opportunities to arrange things like childcare differently and travelling differently and various other things. But maybe the most important thing is, what about new members of staff? Have they been made aware of the possibility within their contract that they will have to revert to a 5-day week, or they may have to?
Thank you. So yes, of course. So as a, you know, as a very conscientious employer, new members of staff are fully aware that we are currently embarked just on a trial. They'll be on a 5-day week contract, and they will fully understand that if the data doesn't support the continuation of the trial or something else untoward happens, then we will revert back to 5-day working week. So yes, of course.
And the next question is from Councillor Tom Bywit.
Thank you, Chairman. As on the order paper.
Leader.
Thank you. So in respect to the 4-day working week, the only costs that have been incurred for reports is officer time in writing them, and officers write reports every minute of every day, and we don't specifically record the time spent on any particular type of report. The mystery shopper exercise, which is something that we would have done anyway for the contact centre, was undertaken to support the performance information that is provided both to scrutiny and overview and also to cabinet. The cost of that was £8,800, and it highlighted the high level of service that our contact centre provides to our residents and our businesses, as well as providing useful feedback for further improvements. And that's something that we are going to embed into our annual work programme, our annual monitoring. But I should say that actually the mystery shopper exercise wasn't undertaken as part of or actually in response to the 4-day week. You'll be aware there's been 2 staff health and wellbeing surveys in the last 2 years, and again, this is business as usual. We do these regularly to provide both members and officers with valuable insight into the health and mindset of council officers. We actually do with one for the health and mindset of councillors as well sometimes. And these are normally undertaken annually. However, because of COVID, the surveys that should have taken place in 2020 and 21 didn't take place. So the cost of the survey in 2022 was £13,794, and the one that we've just done in 2023 was £11,994. And so, although these 2 surveys provided valuable information about the impact of the initial 4-day week trial, they were categorically not commissioned specifically for that purpose.
Councillor Bygott, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Chairman. So the leader mentioned in her response that we don't record what officers do with their time. I was just wondering if she could provide further elaboration on that. And apologies if I've misheard you.
Okay. So officers are, they have a job to do, and their job will include writing reports on whatever it is in their service area. So we don't micromanage people to the extent whereby we need to record every 10 minutes of their time. They have a job to do, and they do that job.
Councillor Bunty-Waters.
Thank you, Chair. As on the agenda paper, thank you.
Can Councillor Henry Batchelor take this one, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and firstly, thank you for Councillor Waters for adding a bit of variety to the topic of the questions that we've had today. Perfectly happy to answer one not on the 4-day week. So the answer to the question is £452,700 for one, so 2 lorries would be double that.
Councillor Waters, did you want to come back with a further question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. How far do they go? Do they go out to all the villages, rural villages, or are they very central?
So technology is improving all the time. The first couple of electric bin lorries we had a much shorter range, so they could only go in and around Waterbeach and Cambridge. But now the range is a lot better, and they have been known to come out to Linton, for example, which is very far away. I don't know if they've made it to the far reaches of Gamlingay yet, but as I said, the technology is improving all the time, so yeah, they are getting more and more range.
Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is as on the order paper.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, you described it as a 4-day week experiment. It's a trial, not an experiment. There's no direct costs associated with publicising or managing changes to bin collections as far as the 4-day week's concerned. As I'm sure you know, the waste collection rounds are optimised and updated every 4 to 5 years. And the exercise was due for the Greater Cambridge Shared Waste Service as it was last done in 2017-2018. So publicising bin collection changes as part of this is just business as usual, and that will be undertaken when new waste collection rounds are developed. The officer time spent in project groups and running workshops in relation to the 4-day week since May 2023 has been 237 officer hours, and that equates to a cost of £4,313. And the amount of time members of the communications team spend responding to inquiries about any policy is not specifically recorded because they're managing numerous inquiries about all sorts of things all of the time. It would take them more time to monitor it than it would to answer the questions, I imagine.
Councillor Williams, do you have a follow-up?
I do have a follow-up. I mean, I thank the leader for that, but I mean, come off it. I don't think you were writing to every single household in the district about changes to bin collections, and that was totally miraculously unconnected to the fact that we had a 4-day bin trial starting. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. The cost of sending a letter to every single household in the district is quite significant, and it was because of the 4-day week trial. We all know that. We all know that because that's why the bins were... the order was messed up. So in Tripolo, in my ward, people went 3 weeks without a black bin collection. In Whittlesford, we went 3 weeks without a blue bin collection. So people had, recycling all over the place. So come off it. It's high time, I think, that this administration flagged down a cab and headed for Real Street and understood the strength of anger that there is out there about the 4-day trial and the staggering cost to this council of this experiment that they are undertaking, because experiment it is. We know the hundreds of thousands of pounds extra per year it costs to go to a 4-day bin collection, because you can't simply do it with the same staff and the same number of bin lorries as you do in a 5-day week. So seriously, I think you really need to engage with what's going on here and abandon this ridiculous and expensive trial.
Leader, do you want to take that as a question or as a
So,
statement?
no, I am going to respond, because actually, Councillor Williams, I find the tone of your questioning thoroughly disrespectful, and I really will refuse to tolerate being called a liar, which is what you've just done. I have given you the facts. Round optimisation has to take place every 4 or 5 years. You are well aware of the growth in our area and that the rounds had become less efficient. And so it is a business as usual piece of work to do the round optimisation, which absolutely, of course, results in letters being sent to every single household, as I imagine it probably did in 2017, 2018, when the Conservatives were running this council. So I will not be called a liar in this council chamber. I'm presenting you with facts, and I think some lessons in courtesy are called for.
Members,
Point of personal explanation, Chair. I never used the word liar.
Members, I don't think the word liar was used. I don't know whether Councillor Williams would like to make a point of personal explanation.
I would just, opposition, I say my recycle bin is groaning with letters from the Liberal Democrats saying how wonderful the government is, and because that's what oppositions do. Of course they don't. Oppositions oppose and they scrutinise, and I did not use the word liar.
Understood. Then we move to the next question. It's from Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on the order paper.
Councillor Mills will take this question.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vice Chair, for your question. So Action on Energy is a partnership scheme between the Cambridgeshire councils looking to access government and energy company funding for housing retrofit for our residents, however we define those. And there are 4 live funding streams, so there's been a change. So I think there was some realisation after HUG 1, which is the home upgrade grant, that we should make some changes to that scheme. So they're currently undergoing that reappraisal. There's been a change in staff in between HUG 1 and HUG 2, and I think there are some important learnings to be taken from that. The HUG 2, the home upgrade grant, follows on from 2 previous schemes, so sustainable warmth and HUG 1, and it's focused on off-gas properties with an energy performance certificate D or below. So it's designed to bring housing up to a minimum standard C, and preferentially more than that if possible. So it's a very useful scheme for our residents to take part in, accepting that it was possibly imperfect previously, but important learnings that have gone into this second phase.
So, Councillor Sanford, we hear that lessons have been learned from HUG 1 and taken into HUG 2. Do you want to ask a supplementary of that?
Yes, please, Chair. I only became aware of these schemes when I was approached by actually the mother of a resident who submitted an application under HUG 1 18 months ago and is still waiting for contractors to turn up to begin the work. They felt they were being bounced from pillar to post between the county, the district and the commercial contractor. I had a very productive meeting with Alex Snelling-Day and her team, who explained the situation as you've given us an overview, and the improvements they're planning, which include a welcome pack, a designated point of contact. But I would like to ask the leader if we can make sure this scheme is reviewed from time to time, scrutinised to make sure residents know where their application is and they aren't left in the cold, literally speaking.
I'm more than happy as the lead member for environment to take that on board. I have regular conversations and meetings with our team, including Alex Stanning Day. So I'll take back your comments and your particular case. I've also had something not dissimilar where an application seems to have disappeared into some unknown area. So there's clearly work to be done, but I know that the officers involved are very keen on making those improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Lisa Redrup, who is online, but normally we would say that we would take your question and give you a written response. Do you want a written response, or do you want to put your question?
I don't mind, whichever's preferable from this, normal practice is fine by me.
I wonder whether the leader or possibly the chief executive would like to respond to this.
Well, I'm happy to take the question since Councillor Redrop's taken the trouble to join us online.
Good. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your question. So we've already covered this to some degree. So the answer is yes. The environment projects and programmes we've taken forward have been set out in the earlier report on the Oxcam partnership. And again, there's more detail available on the website. So there are a number of them are significant in terms of helping us address the climate emergency and support our own doubling nature strategy, which of course is a strategy that's been picked up elsewhere. So one critical one is establishing a green finance mechanism to explore the opportunity for large landscape and catchment scale investment opportunities. And I think that fits in very happily with our own emerging local plan and our call for green sites. Working across boundaries with partners such as local nature partnerships to deliver our local nature recovery strategies, and that's obviously sitting with the County Council at the moment, but overseen by the Combined Authority. And then the first step in a South Midlands community forest, building on the achievements of the community forest of Marston Vale, which if you haven't been there is very, very worth going to. And that, that's with a view of increasing the tree canopy coverage across the region, and bearing in mind we're a region with fewer trees than just about any other part of the country. And then investment in regionally significant environmental infrastructure while developing farming clusters and sustainable land management practices, again, highly pertinent to a rural area like us. So, I think there's lots of opportunities, and I thank you for asking the question, Councillor Redrup.
Thank you very much. I don't have a supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Redrup. And the next question is from Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been overtaken by events here. There has been an announcement of December's Christmas market. So I'm going to foreshorten it. My question, how is this year's Christmas market going to build on the experience of last year's?
Councillor MacDonald could take that.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that we slightly stymied your question by announcing the date. One of the reasons we had to announce the date, and I'm sorry to use the word Christmas on October the 5th, was because we got so many inquiries from traders who came last year. We had about 70. We'll have 70 again. Last year we did a short survey of all those that attended to ask them what they thought about the quality of the organisation and the attendance, and also to get a rough idea of how much income they derived. And the answer was a total of about £25,000. So we feel it's worthwhile, both for the community and the traders, and we hope to do it again. Thank you.
Councillor Stobart, do you have supplementary to that?
To generalise a little bit, how do these big events in general inform, help local businesses, but inform also South Cambs policy in regard to those businesses?
Thanks. Well, as you know, the focus of the business team and the economic development is very much around SMEs. It's literally down to sole traders, or maybe 2 or 3. The focus of the market was very much at that group of people. Some of them are complete startups. 2 or 3 that attended last year's Camborne market was the first market they attended. So it's an important exercise in pump priming the local economy, albeit from a very small base. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions have been notified to the Democratic Services Manager before the meeting. So we'll then move on to item 14, which is motions for debate. I'd remind members that the maximum period of 30 minutes is allowed for each motion to be moved, seconded and debated. That includes dealing with amendments. And at the expiry of the 30-minute period, debate will stop immediately. The mover of the original motion will be given an opportunity to respond. So we only have one motion before us, 14A, which is the motion standing in the name of Councillor Heather Williams. Before I introduce this item and invite Councillor Heather Williams to put her motion, I would draw members' attention to what it says in part 13.6a of our council standing orders, that as this motion seeks to determine an executive function, that is the trial on the 4-day week, I think it relates to, there will not be a vote at the end, and the item will be referred to Cabinet for decision. Councillor Heather Williams, did you want to put your motion?
Thank you, Chair. Before I bring my motion that's on the order paper, I'd first like to bring a motion without notice to suspend Standing Order 13.6a.
Right. Well, before we proceed to that, firstly, do you have a seconder for that? Thank you. And I'm now going to, unusually, I'm going to ask our monitoring officer just to explain the consequences of such a vote were we to agree to it. Because I don't suppose we're all immediately familiar with 13.6a.
Thank you, Chair. If 13.6a is suspended, as per the motion without notice, that would mean that when you debate the substantive motion, it would proceed and it would end with a substantive vote today. So the effect of 13.6a is that it will be debated, but there is no vote at the end. It is automatically referred, and this motion without notice is seeking to suspend that to effectively invite you to debate and vote on the substantive motion today.
Thank you. Just to remind members, if a motion seeks to determine an executive function, it shall, upon being duly moved, seconded and debated, stand referred to the Cabinet to take the final decision, and the proposal here is to suspend that. And we have a seconder. Does anyone wish to speak against that motion? Leader.
Thank you. No, I reject that motion because this is a Cabinet matter, and it is right and proper that it is referred back to Cabinet.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Does Councillor Cohn wish to speak as seconder?
Just that I'm happy to support the motion as it stands.
I don't see any others. I suspect suggest we move directly to a electronic vote on this. So, members, if you want to support the suspension of standing orders, then you vote green. If you want to reject the suspension of standing orders, then you vote red. Has everyone voted who wishes to vote? I think so. So we have 8 for that, 20 against that motion, so that motion is defeated, and Standing Order 13.6a stands. So at the end of this debate, there will be no vote, and the matter will be referred to Cabinet for decision, no doubt taking account of this debate. Do you wish to propose your original motion in the light of that outcome? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Chair. And in moving my motion, I will make as many points as I can, because I realise I've will have difficulty if the leader reaches for 13.6C to throw it out with no debate, as she's already got her hand indicating, Chair, as the Deputy is eagerly trying to draw your attention to. But I do still at least get to move the motion. The 4-day week is something that affects every single one of our residents, whether you're a Liberal Democrat councillor, a Conservative councillor, or an independent councillor. Every single one of our residents is affected by this trial. Also, the figures that were provided earlier, even if we base it on the original 470 members of staff, mean that £3.3 million will be spent in 12 months on salary for hours not worked. That is a huge amount of money, taxpayers' money. I'll provide the maths later, Deputy Leader, if you need them. That really is such a fundamental decision to use and to take, that the exclusion of all councillors, I think, is absolutely awful. And I think it shows complete contempt for the majority, 80% of residents in South Cambridgeshire. Now, I reflected earlier on the fact that when I first came with my youth engagement motion, it got voted down. And later on, it was decided that it was the right thing to do. I've been reminded by colleagues that in 2007, blue bins were introduced by this council, and the Lib Dem opposition kicked up a fuss about that, and it was an awful, awful thing. Now, would any of us be without the blue bins now? So I hope you've had a change on heart, because I don't think with the rest of your spending we could afford to replace them. Northstowe. When it came to community facilities in Northstowe, we said the proposal was not feasible and would not work that was originally put on the table. And we said that the modular option was the best way to get things to Northstowe as quickly as possible. No, we were ignored again. And then later on, the administration had to accept that we were right, and then we go back to it. But how much time wasted? How many residents went without for that period of time? And then most recently, congestion charge. We've said that it's not the right proposal. We've said it's not the right thing to do. We've been laughed at. We've been told we don't care. And yet then, all of a sudden, the proposals fall because the South Cambridgeshire Lib Dem group have a change of heart and a change of direction. I appreciate that is not every single member of the Liberal Democrat group, and that was made quite clear. So I'm going to refer us now back to what I said when I gave my annual report, when I gave advice to the administration to change course. I asked you to change direction before it was too late. I said that this council's reputation and the residents who live here could not afford to continue with what was happening. Reputational damage to this council is extremely high at present. When I say that I'm a councillor of South Cambridgeshire, as I did throughout our conference recently, people instantly know of this, and they instantly believe now that we are the joke council. I don't want to live in a joke council, and I am extremely concerned that all of this has happened with no consultation with residents, and in fact that we have not been allowed a vote. Democrat is in your party name, and yet, as an MP joked, it doesn't feel very democratic around here, does it? So, we were right about youth engagement. We were right about Northstowe. We were right about the blue bins. Some of you at least agree we were right on congestion charge. Please, don't play games. You've already allowed us a vote. Look at what is being asked. For a report to come to council and for us to debate it in the normal way. That should not be controversial. It should not be controversial or ignored the fact that all councillors would want to have a say in how this council is being fundamentally changed, and given that we now face potential financial penalties for doing it. We've all seen the letters, we all know what's potentially on the cards. And yet again, you're still not even allowing us at the next meeting to have a vote as to whether it continues or not. You need, I'm afraid, to listen on this. I told you so was said earlier. And I think actually in congestion charge, completely right. But it's not a nice feeling, because I have pride for where I live. I have pride for the residents I represent. And people can shake their heads and laugh. But at the end of the day, every one of you will have to look your residents in the eye. And if I appreciate Cabinet, administration, you've made your decision, but there's plenty of people in here that are not part of that Cabinet. It was very brave for Councillor Brian Mills to speak in the way he did, and I've shown respect to that last time. People are on the Lib Dem back benches. You have the opportunity to vote here if you want to.
Councillor Williams, would you draw your remarks to a conclusion?
I will do, Chair. Try and get some control of this. If your Cabinet won't, you need to, before we're all a complete laughingstock.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, I would just say that I haven't seen anyone laughing at what you're saying, and that would be let me make it clear, that would be disrespectful. If that were to happen, I would seek to pick it up immediately. I wouldn't like you to respond to that if you don't mind. I would just leave it at that and ask Councillor Graham Cohn, who I think has offered to second this, whether you want to speak now or at the end of the debate.
I'm happy to speak now, Chair.
Please.
So I don't think we should be afraid of this motion. I think it's perfectly reasonable to have a report at the next meeting. I think it's perfectly reasonable for all councillors to have their say and a vote on this issue. I really don't think we should be afraid of this motion as it stands, which is why I support it.
Thank you. Who would like to speak on this? I think I have both the leader and the deputy leader. Leader, did you want to speak?
Thank you. So I'll start by quoting Councillor Williams. So every single one of our residents will be affected by our 4-day week trial. Every single one of our residents will be affected by the money we save, currently standing at £760,000. Every single one of our residents will be affected by the improvement to our services, which are quite clearly cited in our Q1 performance reports. Every single one of our residents will be affected by us having permanent rather than agency staff. Every single one of our residents will benefit from us not having to manage the confusion of Bank Holiday Mondays for our waste collection. Every single one of our residents will benefit from our vacancies attracting far more applicants for those posts of a much higher calibre in the past. Every single one of our residents will be affected by the increased hours in our contact centre and the web chat that we've just launched. Every single one of our residents will be affected by the turbocharging of our transformation programme, especially in planning. And should we decide to recommend that we become a 4-day wait council, there will be a consultation. There'll be a full consultation, and there will be a vote in council. And every single one of our residents will benefit and is benefiting from this administration being innovative in exactly the way that Michael Gove called for us to be at the LGA conference.
I think next was Councillor Hobro.
Thank you, Chair. So I wanted to draw attention to the fact that in the last few years, there have been some very rapid changes in the way that businesses operate. And this council competes as an employer in a highly competitive and changing jobs market in the Cambridge area, which is very successful and has some businesses that can pay some very high salaries. We're accountable to our residents and taxpayers, and we should constantly be looking for ways to improve the value for money that we provide to them. This trial was proposed a year ago at a time when this council suffered from serious problems recruiting to a number of full-time positions. At that time, we were spending £2 million a year on temporary agency staff for those positions, many of which ought to have been filled by dedicated permanent staff. And this was placing a significant burden on our taxpayers. I suggest that it would have been negligent not to address this problem. So this is a trial of a working practice that has been tried and tested and demonstrated significant success in the private sector. If we as a public sector organisation don't adapt and offer competitive working conditions to our employees, then we will not be able to attract and retain the talented and dedicated workforce that we need to offer value for money to our residents and taxpayers. There was an initial 3-month trial of these new working conditions from January to March this year, at which point a report was published. Since the initial trial was successful, it was extended for a further year, at which point I understand there will be a full report and a decision in full council. Additionally, I understand there have been regular reports to the Employment and Staffing Committee, and all these reports are publicly available. There has also been regular scrutiny of the whole process in the Scrutiny and Overview Committee. So far, the results of the trial have been extremely promising. The Council's performance, as measured by the key performance indicators, has not suffered, but continues to improve. I understand that we've recruited permanent employees to around half of the positions that were previously vacant, and this is not only saving over £700,000 per year for taxpayers, but it's already helping to improve our services by bringing in more permanent dedicated staff. I don't know about other councils' experiences, but I've already seen improvements on the ground in everyday casework as a result of permanent staff being in positions that they should always have been in. So I believe that we should only pursue changes like this if they genuinely provide improved value for money for taxpayers. At this point, it looks very much as if this trial is delivering exactly that, but we should allow the trial to be completed before we draw any final conclusions. So I'm speaking in opposition to the motion, as this trial appears so far to be successful, but we should allow it to proceed unimpeded to completion and then review the results objectively once it's finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sally-Ann Hart.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to reassure Council that another 4-day week report will be presented to Employment and Staffing Committee ahead of its meeting on the 9th of November 2023. That's when the next Employment and Staffing meeting is, and that report is available to all members. Secondly, regarding this motion, I believe to go back on a commitment to employees and not see the trial through could be seen as a betrayal. We've already heard that yet more hard-to-fill vacancies have been recruited to, and significantly in planning. And I've no doubt the offer of a 4-day week had a significant part to play in this, and I'm just trawling my memory back. So I think that the data in the most recent report to Employment and Staffing indicated this, alongside the fact that people who were initially unsuccessful at interview will be more likely to reapply for roles at SCDC due to the 4-day week. I know I'm certainly looking forward to hearing further updates on recruitment and figures associated with not having to pay agency staff, alongside details on staff retention in November, if not before. And I'd really like to encourage members and also members of the public to refer to the Council's website page on the 4-day working week, which is regularly updated. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to say that I actually feel I feel proud to be a member of a council that is so forward-thinking. To pull the 4-day week rug now from underneath the feet, I think could lead to a real reduction in recruitment. And I'd like to remind members that there are still a number of hard-to-fill vacancies. I think could also lead to a reduction in staff retention and performance. And I wonder, how can this council fulfil its duties to residents if they do not have enough skilled and experienced human resources in place? The 4-day week trial, therefore, needs to be continued till March 2024.
Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Tom Bigott.
Thank you, Chairman. Our country is a democracy,
and it's one of the oldest democracies in the world. And we're a democracy for a very good reason, because public government is far better when it's done for the benefit of the people and when elected representatives represent the people. Now, we've had a very strange series of debates today. We've had a debate about independent member of the Audit and Governance Committee, and we were sort of treated to a whole discussion about how somebody wants to really be actively engaged in public life and why they've chosen not to be on the electoral roll, which is a very strange argument.
Can I ask you to confine your remarks to the current motion, if you would?
And each of us here represents our wards. We represent the people in our wards. These are people who are going to be greatly affected by this. We don't represent our party in the sense that we have to do what the government says if we're on the same party. We represent our residents in our wards, and that's what we're here for. And there are certain democratic conventions. Now, they may not be enshrined in Rule 13.6a, but there are democratic conventions that major decisions are taken by those who directly represent the people. And the administration should not be seeking to hide behind various minor points in the Constitution in order to stifle democratic accountability. Having a public debate on a major issue that's affecting our residents is the right thing to do. Now, of course, I realise that full council can't make all decisions directly. Minor matters have to be delegated to various committees and done in other ways, because otherwise we would have so many matters before us we wouldn't have time to consider them. But this is one of the most important things that's happened in this council for years, for decades even. You know, we've had letters from government ministers. We've had articles written in national newspapers. We've had the BBC, other forms of national media. This has attracted an enormous amount of public attention to what this council is doing. And given the gravity of all of that, for our members representing people in our wards not to be able to have a vote on that is simply undemocratic. Thank you.
Councillor Brown-Milnes.
Thank you, Chair. The leader of our opposition implores us to listen. But who will we listen to? Shall we listen to her friends in Tufton Street, the Taxpayers Alliance, or any of the other interesting right-wing organisations that emanate from there? Or should we listen to government ministers like Michelle Donnelly, who repeated, I think, this idea that councils in the country were demanding 7 bins per week collections? Or shall we listen to the data? Because that's imperative. What do we want? We want evidence-based policy. When do we want it? After peer review. It's a very Cambridge little joke. But on a serious point, we are part way through a trial. We need for that to complete. And if it shows the evidence that you claim it to, it will be clear and apparent to everybody that the trial has failed. Equally, if the performance is maintained, if the recruitment is improved, as currently the data will evidence, then we need to carry on and complete that trial. And our reputational, or the claimed reputational damage that the leader of the opposition presents will be shown by that data to be false. That actually it's a very good idea to innovate, to do continual improvement, and to offer best value to our residents, exactly as the current government asks us to do.
Right.
Chair, could I give notice of a motion without notice, please? I think we've got to the point, so I refer you to 14D in the standing orders. I think we've heard the arguments. I think things are getting repetitive. So I think this is the point at which we should vote to refer this motion to Cabinet.
Right. You have a seconder. The motion without notice is to refer something to the Cabinet or committee. If passed, the matter shall stand immediately deferred and shall not be further considered at the meeting. I do not propose to take an extended debate on this motion. However, I already had Councillor Lentel and Councillor Williams wanting to speak. Do I have any others wanting to speak? I emphasise that we are now debating a motion to take this matter directly to Cabinet. We are not any longer debating the substance of the motion put originally. Councillor Williams first.
Thank you very much, Chair. In that spirit, the leader just asserted in moving this motion that there was no new information to be put forward on this topic. I would like to oppose her motion by pointing out that there is new information to put forward on this topic. For example, much emphasis has been laid in the case that the administration has made about the supposed savings, which was 300,000, 500,000, now it's 700,000. It's very difficult to keep up. But some of us, some of us have taken the trouble to look at those numbers.
Why this is going straight to the vote,
Councillor Williams, could we keep to the substance
Yes,
of the motion we're now debating, which is whether the matter be referred directly to Cabinet or committee?
I believe I am, by illustrating the fact that there is more debate to be had here, and therefore I think it is not right to foreclose debate. So, for example, I think it is perfectly legitimate that members are able to critique the data that is coming from the administration. Because some of the posts that you're claiming are direct savings of the 4-day week were actually filled before the 4-day week started. And one of them was even filled before the 4-day week was announced. So I think there's plenty of time for debate here about the spurious data that we're being given to justify this policy. I've looked into it, maybe you haven't, but some of those posts you're claiming were filled before the trial even started. And as I say, one of them before it was even publicly announced. So please, stop using figures that just do not bear any relation to reality, and I think it is vital that we continue the debate and we are able to bring all of this out into the public domain.
We are debating a motion under 14D. We are not debating a closer motion. That would have been an option, but that is not the debate we are now having. So, does anyone else wish to contribute to the debate on 14D? I have Councillor Lentel. I'm not intending this to be an extended debate, and I would be most grateful if members would keep their comments to the point on this one.
The complaint is that this council isn't providing sufficient democratic input from all people. I'm in favour of the 4-day week. I live the 4-day week. I'm a full-time carer. I would like to have my say, and I would have liked to have had a say about how I think different approaches to the 4-day week could have been undertaken that weren't simply about retrofitting 4-in-7 working on roles designed, advertised and filled on the basis of 4-in-7. And Councillor Smith, you are interrupting and it's extremely rude, but what you are doing is politically reckless. The complaint is that you are not acting in a democratic way, and your response is to shut down debate. I mean, open goals, really?
Councillor Lentel, I think the next contribution is from the leader.
Thank you. Can I just propose we move this to the vote, please? Because the debate that is happening now is not a debate about the motion without notice. It is deviating onto the previous motion, which rather defies the point. This needs to go to Cabinet, which is the right and proper place for it to happen. I think we've had plenty of time to debate it.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, no, we're not taking another motion while we're debating this motion. We're debating a motion under 14D, and that precludes us from moving straight to a closure motion under 14J. So under 14D, Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. We've already had it that we're not going to vote. I think it's incredibly important. There are people that have not had time to contribute to the motion. The leader and council have had it that we can't vote at the end. there are things that still need to be said, and there are people that have not been given the chance to contribute. And when it comes to data, after what we've seen, how can we trust any so-called independent report that's put in front of us? We have to be allowed to debate this in our own council chamber. And I think, and also, can someone refer to me where the leader in the constitution is allowed to just cut off and interrupt anything she just doesn't like?
We had reached the point where there were only 2 further speakers, both of whom we've since heard from, who wanted to speak to the original motion. I therefore think that it is time for us to move to a motion. I therefore think that it is time to move to a vote on the motion before us, which is under 14D, to refer the matter now to the Cabinet, and if passed, this matter shall stand immediately deferred and should not be further considered at this meeting. It's clear to me there will not be consensus on that, so I propose to move to a recorded vote on that. If you agree to the motion moved by the leader, an electronic vote. If you agree to the motion put forward by the leader, then you will vote, press green. If you disagree, then you will press red. So, on the question, has everyone who wishes to now voted? I think so, a certain number have left us. Right. So, the result is that the leader's motion is passed, 19 votes in favour, 8 votes against. The matter is now referred to the Cabinet, and there shall be no further consideration at this meeting. I'm therefore going to move to the last item of business. Which I think need not detain us long. Item 15, Chair's Engagements. And just to report that since our last council meeting, I attended a royal visit to Lower Valley Farm, Fulbourn, by His Royal Highness the Duke of Gloucester. I would draw members' attention to the work being undertaken, led partly by the County Council at Lower Valley Farm, which I think will be very important to this council as we have to make judgments on off-site biodiversity net gain. On the 24th of August, I attended the Mobile Food Hub in Duxford and would very much commend the work of that hub. And I had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people who really did depend on that, many of whom had been initially very reluctant to come forward and had been persuaded. And I think it's very important, if I may say so for us as councillors, to encourage those in difficulties not to feel any shame or reluctance to come forward when they need help. And on the 29th of September, I visited the Wing Commander's welcome reception at RAF Alconbury, a US Air Force base which, as members may know, no longer has a runway, but does evidently a lot of very valuable work and is a sign of continuing commitment by US Air Force. I would only comment briefly that I was astonished by the number of mayors that there are in this region, all of whom I was very privileged to have met. I think this draws this meeting of council to a close, and the next council meeting will be held on 30th of November, also at 2 p.m. Thank you. We close the meeting at 4:23 p.m.
Thank you.